You're listening to the Rent Roll Radio Show with Sterling Chapman. Hey, Rent Roll Radio listeners, welcome back to the show. As always, I'm your host, Sterling Chapman. Today, we're joined by Ryan Gibson. He is with Spartan Investment Groups. He is in charge of investor relations, and Spartan Investment Groups focuses in self-storage. So we're going to deep dive into the self-storage niche today. I don't know that it's a topic we've really covered in depth on the show yet. So I was super excited to have Ryan join us and agree to shed some light on maybe this overlooked asset class. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sterling. Thanks for the nice intro.
Ryan, can you give me your background? Where'd you come from? How'd you get into real estate? How'd you get into self-storage specifically?
Yeah, I've actually got a background as an airline pilot, flying for a variety of different airlines, U.S. Airways, Express, the old Northwest, and then most recently Alaska Airlines and Delta as a pilot. Also had experience regulatory affairs in Washington, D.C., doing some work for the FAA as a consultant. But on the real estate side of things, I got my start in Washington, D.C., building condos and building homes, and also doing full renovations of projects in some pretty challenging areas. In about 2016, we got a little tired of the residential and started doing commercial projects. So we now do self-storage investments and primarily focusing on markets that are secondary or tertiary. And we really like self-storage because in the last two recessions, it performed very well. So that was what our main draw to it was. And then we also like the easy to own, easy to evict, easy to maintain. So we've been in storage kind of ever since moving from residential into that space. And we've really grown our portfolio of storage facilities.
Awesome. I have a few questions. And I'm going to ask them all right now. And just so I get them out there, because I have a tendency, I'm like, I got three questions. I ask one, we dive down that rabbit hole, and I forget about the second two. So the first question is, or the first one's a statement. So I don't know what it is about real estate and airline pilots, but I have met more airline pilots since I've been in real estate than ever. There is like an enormous correlation between people that fly airplanes and people that buy real estate. And I don't know what the code is. Maybe you could shine some light on that for me, but there's like a huge conversion rate there.
Yeah. This is great. I was actually just talking to another gentleman who does, the same thing. Actually, he runs a fund called Turbine Capital, and we've flown together a bit on a trip. We actually just rented a Cessna and flew to see all of our properties that we're just about to purchase. We're just about to purchase a 9-property portfolio spread across Tennessee, Georgia, and Florida, and we rented our own plane and flew to each one of them. It was really fun. But the thing that I like to say about being an airline pilot, it's the biggest life hack you can probably do in a career. You get to travel for fun around the world, any airline, anywhere, pretty much at no cost. That's great. The benefits are great. And when you're at work, you're flying an airplane. And so it's quite a career. And the people you fly with are top notch. They are very high caliber people. They've gone through extensive background checks and they have great experience. Most of them, or probably 50% of the people you fly with, have been through some type of military background, Air Force, Marines, Army, whatever it might be. And, they're just really great people. The camaraderie is amazing. So in this environment of trust, you kind of get to be around great people, and I'd be able to identify with great people, which I think is an ingredient for success in real estate. And also, the career pays pretty well, and, you do get some downtime. So it's nice, there is some schedule flexibility and the ability to spend time on things like real estate. So yeah. I think you kind of mash all those together and you've got, a pretty high conversion rate, like you said, of folks that get into real estate and fly. And
so that kind of leads into my next question. How do you go from flying airplanes to like wanting to step into the residential space? You just kind of casually threw out there, I went and started building condos. I mean, what started you make want to build? What made you start want to build in condos? How did that transition happen?
Yeah, so I've always been entrepreneurial, and I initially started with providing pilot housing, which we call crash pads around airports. And that was a great source of extra income. You organize a living situation around an airport. You have a lot of pilots that commute into that base and need housing, and they need it efficient and cheap. So you provide that service for them, and then you can collect a little bit of a difference between your expenses and the revenue that you bring in with the apartment. So that was one thing that I started getting into. But really, it all started when I met Scott, my business partner. That's when we got serious. Scott's Army and a veteran. So he has a lot of strategy and strategic decision-making processes down pat. And that's really put the foundation around what Spartan is today. And we both like checklists. It's when you go into a property, you can kind of guess and estimate, but really when you're going to build a business, it's the foundation is on processes and checklists and doing the things that we forget as human beings, but we remember when we look at the checklist. So I think that's what really helped it. And when I met Scott, we were both very passionate entrepreneurs. They had a very disciplined background of going through processes and procedures. And so when we got together, we kind of hit it off. I had a little bit more extroverted. He's very extroverted too, but a little more extroverted capital raising side to me. And he had a little bit more business mindset than I did. So it was a perfect match to raise the capital that we needed to do projects and also have the due diligence to do them and be successful at them. So one by one, we started doing successful projects. And that first residential house, to answer your question, was a house that was right next door to both of our houses. So we met as neighbors. So he was walking down the street one day, bumped into Scott. Literally, he was buying the house 2 doors down, and I was trying to get someone to buy it. And we ended up becoming business partners that way. So that was a really cool opportunity. We bought the house. It was a very difficult situation on buying it because the owners had died and passed away, and the title wasn't cleaned up. And it was in tax auction at one point, and how they go when you build that good equity. Yeah. But and then it just kind of he had a vision to make a strategic plan, which you can actually look on our website. And we have a strategic plan that maps out 3 years into the future. And then we just got busy hiring. So now we're a company of almost 50 employees. Over 150 million under management. And, we have a nice tribe of investors, about 400 active investors. So it's been great. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. And every pilot I talk to mentions the word checklist as well. So that's another commonality, which is great. I can't imagine how important they are in the air, but they're very important in real estate as well. So,
a captain, right when I was getting started, told me a very valuable lesson right away. He said, the day you memorize the checklist is the day you should quit. Yeah. Because you shouldn't memorize what you do. You should always read the checklist and not be complacent. And, the story goes, the first Boeing test pilots, the Chuck Yeagers of days past, crashed off the end of a runway in Seattle testing an airplane. And it was the most basic thing they missed in the process. But they were the best, but they missed a very simple process. It'd be like you not going to title, right, for a property closing, right? And I know you don't need a checklist to tell you that, but that's how you get cavalier. It's, what else do you just kind of get cavalier about? And they crashed, and it's because they didn't pull the aileron gust lock out of the controls, which is a very basic thing that you do on the taxi out, is you check the controls, right? You're thinking, oh my gosh, but these guys were the best. And so that was before checklists were really in place. Now they're in place. It saves lives. So it's a very good process.
It saves money too.
It saves a lot of money.
I don't use checklist, and I still make the very basic mistake. Yeah, I bought a couple fourplexes last year, and I don't understand how this even happened to me, as many properties as I bought. But after closing, it came to my attention that the seller, that the water was not submetered, and I had to pay the water bill. And I'm like, well, that changes my numbers altogether. How did I not like that? I've checked that 150 times. I've checked that on every property. Thousands of times. I underwrite and I check it and I check it and I check it. But I just, like you said, I get cavalier. I'm like, oh, I know it. Yeah, that all looks good. And that very simple little thing, one of the 50 things that we check when we're underwriting properties, just slipped by me. And now all of a sudden my cash flow is all jacked up because of it on those properties. And if I would have had a checklist, like you're saying, I could have avoided it. So definitely.
Yeah. And to build onto that, we haven't learned everything yet. So your checklist grows. You do a transaction and you do an after action review of what happened and you go, oh yeah, that was something new that I've never come across before. So add that to the checklist, and so we actually have a 700 due diligence point checklist now for properties. And it's like a meeting every week when we're going through a closing of a big transaction.
700 points on a self-storage facility? I thought self-storage facilities were simple.
Well, there could be a lot of things. I mean, depending on, we do a lot of expansions.
Sure.
So, going through a title, as a 25-point checklist, what's on the title, what easements, what setbacks, what restrictions you have. Is it on sewer? Is it on electric? Where's the electric panel? Is there tap fees? How much are the tap fees? Things like that. I mean, just, you could go on and on and on and on and on. And like you said, you miss one or two things and all of a sudden you're paying more than you thought and you're missing your projections to your investors or on the deal for you. And I'm happy to share, we share 100 points of those. So if your listeners want a copy of the checklist, I'm happy to, pass that off to you. Maybe you'll get use out of it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll have you share that at the end of the show where you're sharing all of your information. Sure. My next question before I forget, you mentioned secondary and tertiary markets, and, in multifamily, we love those markets. What I have in my very limited exposure to self-storage, what I think I have learned was that self-storage is kind of different when you're underwriting markets. Typically, from what I hear, people are looking for very high volume corners with low inventory and they're like some kind of ratio, like people per square foot or something like that.
Correct.
And it always kind of in my mind, like I looked at buying, my partner wanted to buy one time and we sent it to somebody else that I knew was in the space. And he goes, man, that's kind of out there. It's kind of remote. And his suggestion was more to stay towards the larger areas for traffic count and that kind of thing. How does now, that being said, I drive through small towns and I see a self-storage facility, so I know they exist. And I'm just wondering what your thought process is around the tertiary markets and that whole idea.
So let's first define what a tertiary market is. I think that's probably worth clarifying. So middle of nowhere, New Mexico, hours and hours and hours away from a primary market or a primary airport is not where we play. A tertiary market for us is, that we would buy in would be an hour outside of Atlanta Airport or an hour outside of DFW Airport. So, you still have the major metropolitan area to pull from for jobs and growth and, being a commuter town, but not middle of nowhere, 80 units in the middle of, and there's hardly anybody there or whatever, right? So we still look in, a decent population town, but, primary markets for us would be like Dallas, Chicago, Seattle, Atlanta, et cetera. Secondary markets for us would be like Madison, Wisconsin, even Orlando, arguably might be a secondary market for us. Tertiary markets that you might be familiar with, like Tyler, Texas, 2 hours, east of Dallas. We've got, or an hour and a half east of Dallas. We've got 5 properties out in that market. So tertiary to us is could be more of a secondary for other people. So all the things that you said are correct. The high visibility, the drive-by traffic, the saturation per square foot, the population growth, how many cars are driving by a day. Those are all very important ingredients to a successful project. And, when we look in tertiary, we like that because usually when we're in those markets, we're the most sophisticated operator on the block. So you're competing with mom and pop who don't have deep pockets and do not have the sophistication of operations. Don't know how to advertise, and quite frankly, don't know how to operate. So they don't have the online sales, they don't have the call center, they don't have the software. They don't have the means to put the capital improvements into their project to make it the nicest facility in town and the most desirable place to rent. So we really like the fact that our facilities are in those markets, whereas we're in Fort Worth, Texas, which we consider a primary market, and it's competitive. You've got extra space on every corner. You've got CubeSmart, right? You've got CubeSmart storage, Life Storage, extra space, public storage, and those are bigger operators, and they've got much deeper pockets than we do. So they're sucking up all the advertising space. They're running specials that you can't compete with. They've got stronger SEO and brand recognition than we do. So we like to stay away from those heavily competitive markets where it's kind of a bloodbath of REITs.
Sure.
That come in and play in the space. So the tertiary is where we really make our money. It's also where the population is going as well. Absolutely.
So my question on the concept of competition. So every other asset class that I'm involved with or know about or know people involved with is insanely competitive at the moment. I mean, everything. I mean, people are paying, way over single family houses, way over multifamily. I mean, mobile home parks have now run up the rank. Everything's a bubble. The whole world, everybody's trying to buy everything as quick as they can. How is the competition around the self-storage facility these days?
10 times worse than the asset that you mentioned.
Okay.
And here's why, right? So multifamily, it feels very competitive, right? And it is very competitive, no doubt. Because there's a multifamily conference every week. There's 15 multifamily, groups in your local meetup chapter. Everybody wants multifamily. But the reality is multifamily, there's a lot of multifamily in the United States. There's millions of properties, right, that you could compete against or buy, and you can focus on one market. You could probably get all your deal flow from one market. You could say, I'm going to be in Dallas, or I'm going to be in Austin, and I could be the Austin multifamily guy, and I have enough properties that get listed and transact in that market where I could just focus on that market. There's only 55,000 storage facilities in the United States. So there's almost nowhere to place capital in storage. And of those 55,000, probably 45,000 you don't even want for a variety of reasons. They're Class A, REIT-owned facilities that have absolutely no value to add to them, or they're like the property I mentioned earlier. They're
middle of nowhere, New Mexico.
Exactly, right. And I joke around about that because I had a guy that I flew with who had a family that had a 5,000 square foot facility in the middle of nowhere. I think it was in New Mexico, maybe Arizona. And it was like, you just can't, the time that you spend traveling to that, you're going to lose in your return on your own time, right? So you basically have bought yourself a job. So, when you look at, the number of properties, the number of quality assets that you can buy in the space, you're talking about 10,000, and then probably only 10% of those, and I'm making these numbers up kind of as I go, may trade in the year. So they may become for sale in the year. Some are overpriced, so you eliminate a whole bunch there. And then, some you're under fierce competition with. So, there was a bit that was done recently by a self-storage expert that said every single property that trades in 2021, every single property that comes for sale could be bought by 4 players in the space: Cascade, ELS, I think, or I can't remember the Blackstone and a couple other ones, and they'd only be spending 0.2 of their total investable platform for the year. So essentially, there's way more money in the market for the facilities than there are actual deals that even come available. So the strategy for us has been to be in front of more people in more markets. So we look at 150 different markets that we've analyzed to be the key markets that we want to be in for a variety of different reasons, rent growth, population, saturation, et cetera. And we've dispatched, acquisitions people to be in front of people in those markets. So we have a corner on when the deals are about to transact or transacting. We know about them. We can put in an offer and be competitive. And likewise, we've set up our investor network to where our retail, our investors can take advantage of those investment opportunities. So we can move quickly and efficiently to actually be a good buyer. So, when you look at the competitive landscape of residential and multifamily, it's very competitive. It's no different in storage. I think what people think is, well, we don't really hear a lot about storage because there's not a lot of it, and there's not a lot of people in space, right? So, I'll go try storage, and then they realize, oh my gosh, this is a 4 cap for a storage facility. Are you nuts? And it's like, yeah, welcome to storage. It's a thing. So
what are can you run us through some of the numbers? What kind of returns can investors expect to get, and what is the typical property trade for, yield for? What's the business model? Break it down, the details.
Sure. Yeah. So I would probably say on your spectrum of investment of risk and reward, you've got core plus, value add, and opportunistic. And I think if you're investing in any asset, you would expect that an opportunistic would pay, high teens, low 20s. Mm-hmm. That's ground up development. That's a risky market. It's a variety of different things that makes it opportunistic. And that applies to both multifamily development and any other asset class type. And value add, you're expecting to get in the mid-teens. And that's specific to, any asset class. Value add should be right there on that risk and reward curve. And then working your way down to core plus, you're looking at, just a touch over double digit returns, a 10%, 9%, something like that. And then a core asset, you would expect in the mid to high single digits. So, really just depends, are you buying a class A, fully built, fully leased property on a main and main with tons of drive-by traffic? You're probably looking single digits. Are you buying a value add property in a tertiary market that has expansion potential and rent increase potential and high demand? Then you're looking in the teens, the mid to high teens. So it's similar, in multifamily. If I was buying a class A building in downtown, Dallas, I would expect, the returns to match the risk that I'm taking as an investor. So very similar, our traditional deal is a value add that I just described, mid to high teens with a 2x multiple, potentially over 5 years. So that's what's typical. Cash flow, it depends, right? If it's a ground up deal, there's no cash flow because it's a ground up deal. We do build ground up. Most of our deals are value add. So we're buying some existing cash flow with the expansion potential. So there might be some cash flow right out of the gate. We do monthly distributions that could range anywhere between 3% to 10%. We've even seen as high as 12% cash on cash. It just depends on the deal. So we do a deal by deal. We don't have a fund. We set up our projects on a project by project basis. And, we've seen, again, as high as 12% cash on cash. We've seen as low as, 5% cash on cash or no cash on cash return out of the gate because of the way we're repositioning the property or building it. So.
Awesome. Tell me about building a business. It sounds like you've built quite a substantial business, and you said 50 employees, 150 million in properties, assets under management. Where does that start? And then what does that look like scaling? Because I imagine it was just you and your buddy in your, basement, or I say basement, it's not, your home office when you started. So kind of what steps did y'all take to grow it into what it is today?
Yeah. So they're definitely, it's a long game. If you're an entrepreneur, and you want to go out and make a bunch of money and you want it now, and, wholesaling is great for that. You can try to buy some under market properties and sell them, or, but truly building an infrastructure that allows you to consistently buy assets. Like we're buying 2 self-storage facilities a month that are well vetted and fit our criteria, and have that deal flow is, something that you've got to really be prepared for the long haul. So, taking a back seat to your payroll, because you got to hire people, right? And you got to build out systems and infrastructure. But really what set the framework is a strategic plan. So, what do you want to do over the next 3 years? Do you want to have 100 million under assets in the next 3 years, build out advisory services and set up business infrastructures and a capital raising team that's capable of that? And that strategic plan really lays out the goals and objectives. It's on our website. You can download it. You don't have to put an email in or anything. And that strategic plan will really help you work backwards to what you need to do today, tomorrow, this week, month, quarter, and year, and then over the 3 years of the plan. And, it's having, the BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal of, wanting to have a 300-person company, and then just breaking it down into, what that means today, tomorrow, the most important person to hire. If you're looking at building a company right now, I would give the advice that your first hire has got to be in finance. Your bookkeeping, your financials, your P&L balance sheet for the assets, your investor communication is critical. And if you don't have a control over your finances, that's going to be a recipe for disaster. So, I would say, you have your founders, your founder that has a vision and a strategic, place in the company. And, then you want to have somebody who knows how to keep your bookkeeping straight. I know a lot of people outsource that. We do it internally. We have 3 people on our finance team now. We started with 1. And you want to have control over that, because if you want to go out and get loans, the banks are going to ask for the same stuff, right? Tax returns, P&L, balance sheets, right? You can't get loans, you can't grow your business. Spartan has no debt, which is really cool. Obviously, our subsidiary deals that we buy have debt, but keeping a healthy balance sheet. I'd also be prepared to come to the fight with money. A lot of people say you don't need any money to start a business. Well, it depends on what business it is. I mean, are you going and what are you doing, right? Are you setting up a lemonade stand, or are you going to build a big company? So having some liquidity is really important.
Sure.
Having some education and the chops and the background to do it, could be important. And then just being with for us, it's all about the people. You don't build businesses, you build people, and then people build businesses. So I think we've really had an emphasis on every hire you make in the beginning is critical. If you don't hire the right people in the beginning, your culture gets toxic, your employee morale goes down, people quit, you have turnover, and you have a big problem. It's taken us 3 to 4 months on average to hire somebody. And I know that's a long time, but we just say no a lot and hold the standard high and set up your interview process. We still, even at 50 employees, Scott and I, the CEO, we still have it goes through a phone screen. Then it goes to a one-on-one with the hiring manager. If that passes, then it goes to a panel. If the panel passes, then it goes to, final recommendation, and then it goes to an executive interview. And that's me and Scott. And the point of that interview, we always say is, we're not here to determine your skill set. We're here to decide if you're a good cultural fit with the organization. And likewise, we want to make sure that this is a relaxed environment where you can ask a bunch of questions to make sure that you want to work here as well. And I think just being flexible but firm. We have a policy where, you work remote Monday and Friday. You're in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I know a lot of businesses want to be remote. And here I am standing in our Seattle office. We also have an office in Denver, our main headquarters. If you want to grow, you've got to be in front of people. You can't be in your, room on Zoom, right? You've got to be, it works. If you have an established team, I'm confident it works. I'm confident you can do deals. I'm confident you can transact. But if you really want to grow a business, you've got to have the infrastructure in place. And the little touches that happen when people are in an office just don't happen randomly on Zoom. They don't.
I agree.
And the other thing that we did, I think that's been really effective, is we have a team sync every week. So if you want to start implementing something, we have a team sync with a very specific agenda. It was funny when we actually had fewer employees, like 5 people, sometimes the sync would go like an hour and a half. As we've grown, the sync call has gone down to like 30 minutes, and it's excellent. It's property ops, because we have our own property management. It's asset management. It's our construction company leaders. It's our capital raising leaders. It's our HR department. It's everybody, and everybody knows what to report on. And it's a great check-in with a group where you can just get a lot of information in a very short period of time and feel like you know what's going on in the business. And then lastly, I'll just say mission, vision, values. I think that's way overlooked. I see so many websites where, invest with us. We're a multifamily group, and it's a picture of somebody else's apartment. And there's no pictures of people, and you know what they're selling, but you don't know why. Like Apple always, like the Simon Sinek, start with your why.
Yeah.
We're building a culture of greatness, right? And we want to change the world. How do we do that? Well, we sell computers, and I think people too often focus on what they're selling and not why they're selling it. And there's too many websites that are just kind of faceless. It's like, well,
Sure.
why do these two guys get together and start this company? And I think when you have the mission, vision, values, and you actually follow them and stick to them, your investors will notice, and I think your employees will notice, and your customers will notice, and all of a sudden everybody's kind of like bought into your culture. And I think it's important, and then it just grows from there. Now we're hiring about one person a week. We had 1,400% growth from 2017 to 2020. This year we made the Inc. 500. This year we had 2,400% growth from 2018 to 2021. And now we're on a, hyper growth right now. So, and I think the foundation is so important. It's like what you do in the beginning, what you say, what your why is, I think really helps build a company. So that's kind of a long answer, but.
Hey, I love it. I'm going to go check your website the second we hang up because I'm going to go, man, I'm looking for vision, mission, and values. I'm going to be taking notes. That's awesome.
Yeah. Just don't do what one guy did and copy and paste the whole thing, because we would have a problem with that. So much that we've actually trademarked some of our sayings because we're like, you know what? Somebody literally went on our website and copied our mission, vision, values, everything on our website, and put it up on their website. It was really funny. Like, we emailed the guy. We're like, hey, so this is kind of awkward, but but yeah.
Did he give you a hard time, or did he?
No, he was very apologetic, very easy to work with. Yeah. So, but it was pretty entertaining. Somebody pointed it out to us.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I want to hop to our radio round a little bit just to let our listeners get to know you. Just 3 quick questions. The first one is, what's your favorite book?
So we just read the book. I'll make this relatable. I've got lots of books, but I really love the Henry Ford autobiography.
I just ordered it.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's a little bit old school, but I think old school is what we need right now.
Yeah,
it's a little bit.
I got huge into biography. I'm doing the 75 hard challenge, so it makes me sit and read every day. Whereas I used to read a lot, and then I kind of got away from it and moved to audiobooks. And I can't listen to long autobiographies on Audible because they're 20 hours, So, but now that I'm sitting down reading again, I started with Blackstone's Steve Schwartzman, and I just finished his book, What It Takes.
Yeah.
And then I love it. It inspired me. I loved it. Like when you started talking, like between your speech just now and that book, it inspired me to want to go create like an awesome company. And and when I finished with that, I started Ray Dalio's Principles. And then
we love that. Yeah.
And then I just ordered Henry Ford, and also Andrew Carnegie, and one on.
Check out the No Rules, the Netflix story. That one's really good too.
Phil Knight's Shoe Dog. You can't see it because
Shoe Dog. Yeah.
I got Shoe Dog. I got Titan about John Rockefeller, and the House of Morgan for J.P. Morgan. So
you got a good list there.
Yeah, I'm working on it. I mean, it'll take me a year and a half to read all these books. You can't see, but they're stacked this high.
I love it. Yeah. So, I know that you're going to ask about a favorite quote, so I'll just give it to you.
Yeah.
So it came out of that Henry Ford book, actually. And and Henry Ford says, "You say I started out with practically nothing, but that isn't correct. We all start with all there is. It's how we use it that makes things possible."
Awesome.
Yeah. It's, everybody thinks that, you've got a lack of resources and that guy just, he's, people always ask me, it's interesting at work, or, my previous airline job, they're like, oh, so is it a famous, your dad handed this down to you, or, they just don't believe the success. And it's,
sure.
And it's funny because, it's like anybody can, podcasts were our way to learn, books. I mean, look at all these books. And, if you think about it, in today's world with Audible and getting, Overdrive, you can download
Resources aren't your problem. It's resourcefulness.
Exactly. And, and Henry Ford's book talks to that. And it's like, this is actually resources have never been a problem.
Yeah.
It's been, resources are everywhere in front of you, and it's, you not making the excuse to use them, not use them. Right.
I love the Henry Ford quote. You can have whatever color car you want as long as it's black.
Yeah, I like that too. Yeah.
So what's your favorite thing to do outside of work? It sounds like you got your hands full in the office. What do you do when you're not there?
So my wife and I have 2 kids. We have a son that's 16 months who's awesome. Just starting to grab everything. And a daughter who's 4.5. So we enjoy the outdoors. We're in the Pacific Northwest in Seattle. So we love to hike and do everything outside that there is to do here. Go to the ocean, go to the shore, and hike. So we really like being outside with our kids.
Awesome. So how can our listeners find out more about you, get in touch with you, check out your website, download something you were going to give away for free earlier?
Yeah. So there's a website, Spartan-investors.com. And there's a connect with us on there, like right when you click on it. So Spartan-investors.com, you can jump on our newsletter, and there's a form to fill out if you want to fill it out. On the Invest Now button, just ask for the 100-point due diligence checklist. We'll send it on over. No problem.
Awesome. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate it. I found our interview to be incredibly inspiring, and I'm certainly going to go check out your website, and I really look forward to following you and keeping up with you on your journey. So thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Sterling.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rent Roll Radio Show, brought to you by Crestworth Capital. We hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please hit the subscribe button and leave us a rating and review. You can also visit us at crestworthcapital.com or rentrollradio.com, or follow us on Facebook at Rent Roll Radio or at Crestworth Capital. If you would like to reach us, feel free to shoot us an email at info@rentrollradio.com or sterling@crestworthcapital.com. We hope you come back next week to join us on some more of our journey. Until then, happy investing.